Well, good morning, folks, and welcome to this short webinar on UCCX calendar management. My name's Bruce Wilkinson. I'm an instructor with Sunset Learning, and I'll be leading you through this webinar today. Our agenda in the time we have together is fairly simple. There's really only one topic, I guess, that we'll be talking about, and that is calendar management. We want to describe what we mean by that term. And I guess what we'll find is that there's always been some form or other of calendar management in UCCX almost since the day it was constructed. But now in version 12, we have some more user-friendly approaches to that same sort of process. So we'll look very briefly at, those topics or those methodologies that prior to version 12 gave us some calendar management functionality, and maybe describe the limitations or restrictions of those options, which were really the driving force, I suppose, between delivering calendar management as we now know it in version. Well, good morning, folks, and welcome to this brief webinar on UCCX calendar management. I notice that we've got something like about 17 or so participants, so welcome to you all. Throughout this session, if you wouldn't mind using the chat, if you have questions, and we'll deal with those as we go along. There will be also some opportunities for Q&A at the end of this session, but please feel free to pop something in chat along the way as well. I'll do my best to keep an eye out for chats as they pop in. We don't have any panelists or anybody who's monitoring that, so I'll do my best to keep an eye out for that sort of thing. Our agenda is fairly simple, given that we just have the one, feature that we're looking at, and that is calendar management. We want to talk a little bit about what we mean by that, and look at the way in which that process was developed or offered to UCCX users prior to version 12 and what is now being dubbed calendar management. Because calendar management in one form or another has been around almost as long as UCCX has been around. But it has certain restrictions, I suppose, and that's what we want to pull out and compare, I guess, with the calendar management feature that is now being delivered. We have reserved, I think, about an hour for this webinar. I doubt we'll take that long because, again, as I say, it's a relatively simple process, which will sort of step you through and show you the way in which you can manipulate and use that. At the end of the session, there'll be a brief wrap-up, talk a little bit about some of the features within Sunset Learning in terms of webinars and Next and some other options that you might take to better equip you to do your jobs back at the ranch, which is really what it's all about. So I guess without further ado, what am I describing, or what do we mean here by this term calendar management? Well, briefly put, it's the ability to recognise special days, weekends, business hours, time of day, and route accordingly based on the analysis of that calendar during script runtime. And all we're really doing in this environment is attempting to tell the caller or advise the caller whether the contact center is open or closed, and maybe why. Is it closed for a holiday, or is it outside business hours? or is it in fact open? So that's really what I guess requirement for these holidays, special days, weekends, time of day, etc., is all about. And prior to version 12, there were 3 techniques essentially that were used to provide this functionality in our script. We had the ability to look up a database, to look up an XML document, or within the UCCX script itself, use a switch step, which could, simply evaluate, the particular date, etc. I guess coupled with that as well, or with those scripts, were also the ability to, determine day of week and time of day, and fairly readily, I suppose, manipulate the script function on the basis of that sort of resolution. In version 12, now those options have not gone away, of course, but in version 12 and beyond, we're now being introduced to this new feature, calendar management itself. So we'll first look at, these, I guess, original or older techniques, let me use that phrase, and then move into looking at calendar management itself. Firstly, DB lookup or database lookup required, of course, an accessible, compatible database. And we essentially used 2 steps for that sort of process. One was the first was a DB read, which, having sort of defined, if you like, or pointed to a particular resource, then was able to define a select statement, in this case an SQL select statement, pointing to a particular database and returning should we see a month and day match that information. So if we see something that matches today's date, month and day, then we would regard that as a holiday of some form. Now that was always used, or is always used, in conjunction with a DB get step, which, having used the DB read to drag information from the database and bring it into the script logic, as it were, we would then need to get that data out and sort of route on it, recognize it, route on it, etc. So that was how we managed perhaps holidays using the database lookup environment. The XML examination of an XML document used a somewhat more complex set of steps to create an XML document, a file document, etc., which had the function, again, of accessing an XML document, which provided then, again, a match for today's date. And if we saw today's date in the list of XML dates in that document, we could determine that yes, today is a holiday, or no, if it's not there, no, it's not a holiday, or a special day. Any type of information was appropriate. I guess one of the things that is not in favour of either of those 2 approaches is that to manage that process requires at least administrator access. In other words, you needed to be able to access that database itself to change those days that might be a holiday or not, or that XML document. And generally speaking, that was an administrator level access, and generally no sort of day-to-day supervisory management was provided for that sort of level of facility. So that, I suppose, was a little bit of a downer, perhaps, for those sorts of environments. The other third in the sort of trilogy of calendar management pre V12 was in the script itself, just using a switch step, which was able to manage, a particular date which we glean from, the script at runtime, and provide an output, if you like, for that switch step as defining a particular holiday. If it didn't see any of those matching dates in that switch step, then it would simply continue on. So like the management of database and XML requiring administrator access, this switch step, usually requires at least sort of administration or scripting expertise and access to that script. And that's not necessarily, a day-to-day dynamic sort of access that you might want. Of course, coupled with both of those, all of those three options is day of week and time of day, where, we can simply determine whether or not it's a weekday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or a weekend, Saturday, Sunday, etc. And depending on, again, the output path taken by that day of week, we could then, route to a closed message or continue on with our ACD script. And it's the same with the time of day. So all of those things are there and able to provide us with calendar management. But as we say, it requires management from either an administrator access or a scripting access. Either of those sorts of things are required to manage and manipulate that sort of facility. Generally, again, no supervisor management. And I guess I don't have any privileged insight into whether or not that level of access was the motivating factor for introducing calendar management or not. I'm tempted to say it was part of it, because certainly that is something that, we will look at, okay? The implementation of calendar management as a feature as opposed to a function has three separate streams, if you will. Certainly, there needs to be a configuration stream. There is a scripting implication and scripting steps which are involved. And here, I guess, is the biggie, and that is having configured and scripted to support this feature. We can, via the user management supervisor capability view, offer to our supervisor agents access to this calendar management. So whatever we've configured can be accessed and manipulated via the supervisor. Now, full disclosure, I don't have that supervisor screen, so I can't show you those gadgets in this webinar, but I can show you what's necessary in order to provide the gadgets. Just by the way, and I guess as a FYI, the reason that I don't is that in our platform that we're currently running, we don't have engineering special, I think 02, I think it is, which is required, because as out of the box, even though you can provide for the advanced supervisor management tools, and I'll show you where, it doesn't show up on the supervisor desktop until that engineering special is applied. It's a little bit of a glitch that we found out about, a little too late. But nonetheless, the sorts of manipulations that we're going to be able to demonstrate to you, you can assume can be done by the supervisor, provided that supervisor has access. So I think the best way to show you that sort of stuff is not, via slides, but perhaps via some live demos and to show you what we've built. And maybe even if there's time or if you're interested, we can build it. there's no real sort of complexity about this. That's one, I guess, one of its benefits in that it is reasonably simple to configure. So let me just bring up now. Michelle is asking, can we have a copy of the slide deck? Michelle, I'm not 100% sure, to be perfectly frank. It's a bit outside my pay grade. I'm going to say no, but I don't really know, to be perfectly honest. I'll take a note and ask that question, or you could maybe see your Sunset account manager. What I do know is that this is being recorded, and you can get access, soft copy to the whole sort of webinar at any time, through your subscriptions. But that, folks often ask, well, I that's fine, but what I'd really like to do is, just be able to look at it myself, at any given time. So let me take that one on notice and have someone get to you for that. Okay, so so what I'm showing you here is 12.5.1 UCCX, and you can see that calendar management is under applications under calendar management. So the first step, I suppose, is to create your calendars. We click on that and you'll see that I've created 3 calendars just for no other reason other than to make it perhaps a little easier to do some demonstrations. But let's just take a look at what I've done. So business hours is just a calendar, and I've given it that name. The description is normal business hours. It's defined here as fixed hours. What that means is that whatever I put here for Monday, and I've put 8 a.m. until 9 a.m. Now, the reason I've done that is that I've also put from 11 a.m. until 5 p.m. as time range 2. So what this means is that if we run this calendar at runtime, and by the way, these are Denver or Colorado times, so between 8 and 9, which is really earlier this morning from the Denver point of view, we essentially were open, but from 9 until 10, which is really the duration of this seminar in Colorado times, we were closed. Let's imagine it was lunchtime. And then we would reopen again at 11 through till 5. So that's essentially what that sort of structure is. Now, I won't demonstrate that just yet. We'll come back and see what that sort of means. Noting also that we've got the ability to have a time range 3. So this is how you would create that environment for a particular day or a number of days. You have time slots where you are open, and by definition, therefore, time slots where you are closed. Okay. The difference between fixed hours and flexible hours on this screen is that if I choose flexible hours, I still have the same opportunity to do everything I had done, for time range 1, 2, and 3, but I can have different times for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So that's really on that initial screen. If I were to choose 24/7, then there are no options for Monday, through Friday. It's 24/7. Now, for each of these business hours, 24/7, fixed hours or flexible hours, you have the opportunity to do some exceptions. And if I put an exception here for, say, a particular day, whatever that day may be, then I can create, a separate time range 1, 2, and 3 for that particular day. So if we go back, for instance, to, let's say, fixed hours, Monday through Friday, 12 a.m., whatever that, might be. Well, let's go to our 24/7. My 24/7, that's really like a forced open because it's open all the time. If I click next, then I can say, well, that's fine, except for this particular day when my time range is as noted here. And I can add, other days, etc., for that process as well. And this is really just our sort of open, closed environment. Either we're open, we're 9 to 5, or we're not. The other, or if we click next on any one of those strings, we then get to add our holidays. And we can add a holiday, 4th of July, Christmas Day, whatever that holiday might make. So if we look at it from, say, left to right, or from top to bottom, depending on your perspective, anything subsequent to this original screen overrides whatever you've got configured in this particular screen. So, we're saying here, these are the business hours, except if I had something, next, then that would override it. If I had something in the holidays, that would override the special days as well. Now, I'll show you, in more detail just what I've got configured, to demonstrate it. But that's only half the story, because as well as creating our calendars here, then we have to be able to call up those calendars in our UCCX script. So again, I've sort of prepared a simple little script here that I have called calendar 1 for no other reason than it's just something to demonstrate. And if we expand all these, you'll see the way in which I've constructed this. The first thing to realize that as well as that calendar management in UCCX configuration, there is also a calendar step, which is new for calendar management. So you bring that calendar step out into the script, and it's the same sort of function that you're used to in your scripting. If we right-click on the calendar step for properties, you'll see all we're really doing is calling up the particular calendar, which is always a variable. So the variable that we're calling up here is the variable standard. And if I click on that, notice here something else, again, that's new, that the variable type now is contact center calendar, CC calendar. We'll give it a name, and that's just any name, and that's just how, we can pull that in. The value is null. And here, interestingly enough, this is always by default a parameter. So far, what have we done? We've configured our calendars, manipulating those times, as we might want. We have built or configured a calendar step in our script, which calls up that particular calendar, and we'll see how that happens. Notice that it's a parameter, and the clue to that is that having scripted this, we know we don't need to go anywhere near the script anytime soon, because it's a parameter. We're going to see that that's available in our application. Now, just for grins, what I've done here, you'll notice that there are 1, 2, 4 output paths: business hours, holidays, the rest, which are neither business hours nor holidays, and a failure. And I was contemplating doing a reactive debug and coming back here each time so that you could see where the script exit based on the calendar that I created. But instead of that, I've got a sort of simple, fairly poorly recorded, I have to say, prompt step, which just says if we come out business hours, you're going to hear the contact center's open. If we come out of holidays, closed for a holiday. If we come out of the rest, we're closed. And if it fails, we'll come out here for failure. Okay, so we've got our config, we've got our script. Now notice that this little step or the script is just playing that, just exercising that calendar step. It's not doing anything else, but I'll leave it to your imagination to be able to say, well, if I pop this calendar step in one of my production scripts, that would work. And absolutely right, it would. So let's just minimize that and go back to our configuration, because in order to exercise now our calendars, we'll go to our application management. And I've set that calendar 1 script to run under an application here, app 00. And here you can see that for the script that is containing the calendar variable, the calendar step and variable, I have a couple of parameter windows. And notice it's because those variables were set as parameters. And if I choose the variable standard, then against that, I can then choose the business hours, holiday, or force open calendar. Now, you probably wouldn't do this necessarily in real life because, yes, if you were imagining, I could do this all in one calendar, right? We've seen I could do business hours, special days, and holidays. But I've done this really just for the purposes of demonstration, I guess. So if we look at force open, and I update that, and I go just to the calendar, and I look at the force open calendar, you'll see it's 24/7, and that there are no no holidays. So if it's 24/7 and there are no holidays, when I call this application up using the trigger, (1001), and I have 3 triggers, that's just for different classes, etc. It should, we should hear the open prompt. So let me minimize this for a moment. I'll bring up just a phone. Now, nothing's, really going to be functional other than the ability to hear those prompts. Let me turn my volumes way up, and my trigger was 1001.
Contact center is open.
Now, hopefully you heard that the contact center is open. Okay. Trust me, that's what it said, and the reason it said that is because this calendar resolved those 24/7s to business hours, and it applied the prompt, the contact center is open. Then it goes nowhere for the purposes of this demonstration. But let's just take a look then back here and maybe take a look at business hours. Now, you might argue that that's a strange name, but let me tell you what I've shown you here in business hours. I'll go to calendar management, and business hours does have an 8 till 9, which is 10 to 11, and then from 11 10 to 11, and then from 1 this is Denver time, so this is really 10 to 11. It should be open. Now we're past 11, it's 11:33, and won't be open again until 1 o'clock local time. I'm in Virginia. So let's play this, and we should. Oops. Let me take a look here. Oh, I dialed the right number, perhaps.
Contact center is closed.
Okay, you heard the contact center was closed. Why? Because I gave myself a little artificial lunchtime sometime between 11 o'clock our time and 1 o'clock our time. So we're right in the middle of that. So that's how we would create essentially lunchtimes, if you will. And the last one then, if I look again at calendar management for holidays, here we've created a time range, 9 a.m. till 6 p.m. So that should well and truly be open. Okay. There are no special days, but I've got a demo holiday, which is the 30th of March, which is today's date. So this demo holiday entry should override my sort of normal business hours, irrespective of the day. So let's see what happens then if I go back to my applications, application management. I'll select now my holiday calendar. And I'll redial.
Closed for the holiday.
And it says we're closed for the holiday. Thank you, Ahmed. 1001, you're right. I got there eventually, buddy, but thank you. So that's essentially by way of demonstration of what you can do with those services. Let me just go back and maybe just do one other thing. I'm doing this on the fly, so hopefully I'll get it right. So I'll go back to my applications, my calendar management. I'll go to the Force Open and I'll say we're open 24/7 except today, when we're really only open from, let's just pick a time that is not going to be something we'd experience, from 5 a.m. until, 9 a.m. It's sort of a bit crazy, practically speaking, but that's what we're saying. This is an exception for the 30th of March. And we'll click finish. Go back to our application that we're using to test all this stuff. And I'll select Force Open, which is accept, of course, the date we've got. Redial.
Contact center is closed.
Okay, so that special day, which we determined was today, let us close the contact center, if you will. And the last, sort of one to demonstrate, I suppose, is here. If I take out the variable, in other words, I'm not selecting any of those calendars now, and I update, and I redial.
Calendar step failed.
Okay, so what happened there was that we dropped all the way down to the failure, and I just played that failure prompt, which is not really demonstrating a failure, but demonstrating how you would take that calendar out altogether for whatever reason. Okay, now what you will do as a supervisor, in real life, as your calendars and calendars are being implemented, depends on your business need. One last thing, and that is, you'll notice here I've got standard and holiday. I can create multiple calendars for my system. How I do that is back here in my script. I can define more than one calendar variable. Here is the calendar variable standard, and here is the calendar variable holiday. So I can call up either of those variables, if you will, or calendars, which then in the application gives me the opportunity to select the particular calendar that is called up. And I think essentially what that means is that I can, if I wanted to, not sure why I would ever do this, but I could cascade my calendars. Let's say this guy is going to call up holiday. Now, why would you do that? I have no idea right now. All I'm wanting to sort of demonstrate, I suppose, is the flexibility that you've got via this process. So that, plus the ability, if I look at my tools, user management, supervisor capability view, again, new with calendar management, comes the opportunity to define for a supervisor, or to give a supervisor access to whatever calendars you want to give that guy access to. Similarly, you can give the supervisor now access to the application page. So that means that manipulation that I was doing with both the calendars and the application is now available on the supervisor's desktop, provided that you've got V12 Engineering Special 02, which I don't. It will show up on the supervisor's desktop. So those things are, to me, are positives. But here is something, and let me sort of just share with you what I think is maybe a little bit of a negative. And it might be one of the reasons why you would contemplate cascading holidays, perhaps. Unlike the switch step, you don't have the ability to define what the holiday is. We can't say we're closed for Christmas, we're closed for the 4th of July. All we can say is we're closed. And if you wanted to do that, then I think you would have to contemplate somehow cascading these calendars so that, for a particular, if one proves positive for a particular date, then you'll play a special prompt. And that, that's a valid reason, I think, for wanting to do that sort of thing. So that, in a nutshell, is calendar management. I think it overall is, an improvement. It gives us, still more options. That include that when added to the advanced supervisor capabilities for both applications and calendars, not to mention, of course, but you can also provide the supervisor now with queue management. So I think once we get Engineering Special up and running, we may run another little quick 1-hour webinar that's going to not only look at how we do actually manipulate our calendars and our applications, but also notice that we can do outbound campaign management as well. So the supervisor is really being equipped with a lot more flexibility and management capabilities than in previous versions. And that, I think, is a good thing. So let me just drop back for a moment. Next, on-demand thing that we run as well gives you access to our library of technical videos, access to the recorded webinars, discussion boards. There are a whole bunch of stuff going on within Sunset Learning that is starting to embrace the remote nature of learning. Because while I'm, a big fan of these two classes, I sort of recognize the fact that it is difficult these days to get 5 days away from the office for no matter how good the class is. So I think you're going to see more and more emphasis on this sort of thing. And in fact, this is Bruce's vision, and I try and sort of impart that to Sunset Learning where I can. I would like to see, a whole bunch of 1-hour, very focused recording type seminars, sort of like this. So if you're doing some deployments or you're doing some scripting and you're having trouble accessing a database, for instance, or accessing a subroutine and you can't get your subroutine for work, come here to the digital sort of library, do a search, find here's a 30-minute demonstration on accessing your database or getting your DB reads to work. Along with, if it's not, take a look here and there. So I personally think that's the future of training, because you come to a 5-day class and it's great and you enjoy it, I'm sure. But then you go back and you use this percentage of it and you forget the rest maybe. Whereas if you've perhaps got some form of starter and then you want to quickly look at, it's almost like YouTube. Okay, I have to say, but a Sunset Learning YouTube, which would be much better. Anyway, that almost takes us to the end of this webinar. I haven't left a whole lot of time for questions, but if there are any, let me have them. Just pop it in the chat and we can handle them. If not, if there are no questions, thank you for listening. Thank you for participating. Don't forget to get with your Sunset sales guy or account manager. I can't remember what we call them these days, for more detail, if you will, on these sorts of things. But again, next 1K takes $1,000 off that price. Wow. I might sign up myself. All righty. I appreciate your attendance, folks, and I thank you once again.